So I guess people will start joining. So good evening, everybody. It is our pleasure to have you today for the 26th talk in our regular webinar series that has been initiated as the Saturday Manufacturing Talks under the under the Center of Excellence in Advanced Manufacturing Technologies. As you all know, this this center has been set up under the Department of Heavy Industries, and Department of Heavy Industries also encourages this center to work with the local entrepreneurs, particularly the medium and small scale industries, and for them to work with us. Some of the talks which are scheduled in this have been very useful, and we planned for it. Professor Surjapal had asked me to look at this talk today, particularly when we have an eminent speaker like Mr. Dipankar Basu, who is also an ex-student of IIT Kharagpur and has very rich experience in this area of encouraging industries to be more visible in this scope of entrepreneurship and industry and do good valued business. So I have with me, since I'm also heading the School of Engineering Entrepreneurship, which was established by, again, through our alumni, also in the name of the faculty of our institute, Professor Rajendra Mishra, who was a faculty in mechanical engineering. He was amongst the first to start an engineering management education in the campus. And I have Professor Manoj Mandal, who will do the introductions and the moderation of the event today. That's because he regularly does this for a large number of people here who come to the institute. So I requested and he consented for the same. So once again, let me thank Dipankar, as he is fondly known as Danny for several of us, Dipankar Basu, to be present today. I'll now request Professor Mandal to do the introductions.
Thank you, Professor Kumar.
Just one small thing I missed out. We are also holding this event under the 75th year of the independence, Azaadi Amrit Mahotsav. So you will see that banner quite often in the thing. So that's another thing I wanted to let you all know. Thank you once again. Yeah, Mr. Mandal. Dr. Mandal, please.
Thank you, Professor Kumar. It's a privilege and honor to introduce Mr. Dipankar Basu, today's speaker. Before I go to introduce him, I'll just lay the foundation by introducing the topic itself. Content marketing is the most important thing now because traditional marketing is not working. It's very slow, very costly, etc. So digital marketing. So digital marketing contains several items like say content marketing, where you create a narrative that resonate with the customers and you get a shortcut to engage with the customer right away. Then you do search engine optimization, that is your company or your brand should come in the first page of the search engine so that you get direct attention to the customers. Then you can advertise in some social media network where you pay on per click basis. So you get connected by paying money. Then there is social media marketing, almost like pay per click. Then you try to connect with customers who are not coming to your website for the second time, third time. You want to maintain a regular, engagement with the customer. So you do email marketing. There are many other issues about email marketing. Then you try to connect with third-party websites that is known as affiliated marketing, meaning you are trying to affiliate yourself with some third party. Then there are influencer marketing, where some guys are highly influenced and they have a fan follower, so you get loyalty based on their loyalty to their audience. Now, having said that, we have a wonderful speaker today. Dipankar Basu is our own alumnus, and he has a wonderful career and the right man of the field. This topic is a burning topic today, because if you are thinking of starting a business, whatever that is, whether it's a brick mortar business or an e-commerce business, without digital marketing, one cannot really survive or cannot really reach out to the customers. Otherwise, it's going to meaning traditional marketing is a huge, long process, and by the time you reach out to the customer, they will go to some other competitors. Dipankar did his graduation in chemical engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 1990. His IIT name, the name by which he was known in IIT fraternity, is Danny. And Danny had a wonderful career in different manufacturing company like UB Group and many others. Finally, he started his own company. That was in 2005. From there, his journey was kind of very successful journey. He was featured twice as one of the fastest growing companies in US in 2012 and 2013. And he is helping many small and medium scale enterprises in reaching out to their customer through digital marketing, through creating online visibility to them, means their brand, etc., etc. So now, without much ado, I am now inviting Mr. Dipankar Basu so that you hear directly from the horse's mouth. His headquarters is in California, so he is an NRI, and he is right in the center of the activities happening around the world. Thank you, Mr. Basu, and thank you, Danny. Actually, I'm your senior, so I'm just taking that privilege, and the stage is yours. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you, Professor Mondal. Thank you, Professor Kumar, for giving me the opportunity today. So I will first share my screen. Just give me a second. So today's presentation is kind of like a summary of some of the things which I've learned myself in the last 20 years. And I've been working, as Professor Mondal mentioned, that with a number of primarily small and medium-sized businesses, both in manufacturing and in services industries. So today I will gear myself more towards the entrepreneur segment. So some of my friends here, they are more advanced, but this particular presentation is geared more towards the smaller sort of entrepreneur who is starting out. So if you allow me, I will start the presentation. So initially, the first question, which typically most manufacturing entrepreneurs question, is that why do I need digital marketing? Because obviously, when somebody is a startup, they have limited resources, they have limited time. So, their time is very valuable. So predominantly, majority of the entrepreneurs who I have interacted with, their primary focus is on their product, which is what it should be. But in today's world, the product is a necessary condition. You have to have a good product, without which you cannot go forward, but that's not sufficient. In addition to having a good product or a good service, which you can differentiate, you also have to reach your potential customer or your target customer. And digital marketing is, today's times, is almost a must to do that. So why do manufacturers need digital visibility? So the short answer to that is that your buyers have changed. What used to work when I started in the in the 80s and 90s, what used to work in marketing, like, salespeople coming in, giving presentations, like, trade shows and other like magazine ads, etc. So those things have reduced in efficiency as the internet penetration has deepened. So your potential buyers, whether it's a B2B or a B2C, either way, they are spending a lot more time on the web and less time on traditional sort of devices like magazines. So In short, you have to have a good digital presence to reach your potential customer. So having said that, because it's a very vast field, so a lot of times people get lost when they start their digital marketing process. So typically we have to keep it as structured as possible. So the first thing which we need to kind of define is, what are our sales goals? What are the things which we are trying to achieve through this digital marketing program? After defining that, you have to determine who is your target demographic customer. And it can be multiple different demographics, but you have to create profiles for each one, because you have to reach those people through different online avenues. So say, for example, if you have, say, like a machine tool, which is your product, and you know that there are certain product managers who are going to be the decision makers for making the decision to buy your product, then they will probably be active in some online forums, for example, technical forums. So you have to have a presence there. Obviously, you have to have a presence in Google, because that's an overarching sort of search engine which almost everyone uses. But in addition to that, there are multiple different ways in which you can reach your key demographic profiles, and you have to first define the demographic profiles so that you can understand the different avenues in which you can reach them. Then, after you create those different avenues, then you build a multifaceted online strategy which kind of feeds off each other. Each one is not independent by itself, and as I will show you in the subsequent slides here, that it's all kind of related, and it's very important to understand that. Finally, once you start the marketing strategy or the marketing plan, you have to have great analytics, which you can track conversions and goals. And one of the big advantages of digital marketing is that it is dynamic. It can be changed on real time. You're not sort of stuck with a specific decision for a period of time. So it's very important to track conversions and goals so that you can modify the marketing mix in real time to strengthen the ones which are working, to reduce the emphasis on the ones which are not, or maybe modify it. So those are the things which you can do. That's the main reason why you need the digital marketing work. So in terms of the differences between traditional versus digital marketing, I'm pretty sure most of us here know it, but the predominant difference is push versus pull marketing. So in terms of traditional marketing, like magazine ads or a billboard, not the digital billboards, but the regular billboards. So those are the ones which you are kind of fixed in time. Once you give the ad, it will be there for a period of time, right? And you cannot determine who is going to read the magazine. Obviously, it's like if it's a trade magazine, there will be a group of people who are kind of interested with your industry, but it's not necessary that they are going to need your product at that time. On the other hand, a major component of digital marketing depends on pull marketing, which is like if somebody is searching for a product and you are there at that time, it is way more valuable, obviously, intuitively, as opposed to push marketing. So that's a big difference. Of course, static versus dynamic. A traditional marketing is relying on static ads, which is decided in advance. There's a cycle time which is not there in dynamic digital marketing. You can change almost on real-time basis. Like again, what is working, you can push more and things like that. And of course, it's on demand. So if somebody is searching for specific keywords, and if you are there at that time, you can choose ads to be on demand at that point of time. So there's a higher chance of conversion. So in terms of the manufacturing buyers personas, and there is a particular manufacturing process which your product has to go through, and it will depend on your product what that process will be. It will be different for each one. So for example, if there's a product which is not there in the market at all, so the first step for your company is to create the need for that product, right? So but in case of, say, a product which is already existing and it's an improved version of the existing products, then it's like, you have to highlight the product features more. So in either way, the first initial step is to inculcate the need and to kind of jumpstart so that the buyers can start researching, or they can delegate the research to a team of people within their company. So every step of this manufacturing process, there is a particular digital exercise which can gear towards that. Some cases, the buyer is unhappy with the current component or product. They want to improve. So your product can maybe deliver that. So again, there is a way in which you can cater to this kind of where the buyer is in their cycle in this situation. After you establish the need and after you give them content for research, then it leads to the evaluation phase typically. So the buyer evaluates potential suppliers, you being one of them, and your goal here is of course to get shortlisted or maybe be selected as the supplier of choice. And then in some cases, it may not be immediate. The purchasing cycle may be long. So then the digital marketing has to cater to that and kind of reinforce and be on the top of the mind recall for your buyers, right? So that's another phase, which again, all these ones you have to determine beforehand so that you can plan your digital marketing towards it. Finally, the buyer makes the purchase decision, which we call as the conversion cycle. So the buyer purchases from the supplier. So then the phase changes to, it's very difficult to get a customer, right? So you have to have repeat purchases from the existing customer. So how do we do that? So there is a way in digital marketing in which you can reinforce this area as well. So if you kind of, what I just described in the purchasing cycle, if you define it within the digital marketing experience, so there is mainly there are 4 broad phases. There can be further differentiation here, but broadly there are 4 phases. The first phase is the awareness phase, where you are allowing people to learn about your product. In some cases, if the product is innovative and it's brand new, then you have to also have potential customers learn about the need of the product for the product, right? So in this phase, you need impressions or eyeballs. So there are ways in which you can expose yourself to a large section of the audience, like potential audience, even though it's not like completely across the board, but the goal here is to reach as many people as possible. The second phase is more persuasive. Now you are trying to funnel down where people are considering you, right? So the goal is a little bit different. Here, instead of impressions, you are seeking clicks, right? So people who are coming to, they're seeing your ad, they're seeing your website, they have to come to your website or they come to other digital assets for you, and then they can determine which ones, why your product is more valuable, and that consideration phase, it's more geared towards clicks. The third phase is where the intent is increasing. Now you're close to the purchasing decision, but you have to have reinforcement. Like, for example, you have to build online reputation so that what is the peers are talking about, like the example which I mentioned about forums, things like that. So those are the areas which are all online, which you have to keep positive so that once you are under consideration, you can allow the buyer to take the final step of making that decision. You're helping them to do that through these reinforcement mechanisms. And finally, there's the calls to action, the conversion cycle, when people make the purchasing decision. So here it is like geared towards cost per acquisition. So what you can do to help the customer or the potential customer acquire your product. So that's the 4 broad kind of groups in which you can determine the purchasing cycle experience. So there is an acronym which is pretty well established in today's industrial cycle. So every goal, there's an acronym of SMART. So if you have digital goals, it has to be specific and measurable. So if it is subjective, then it's very difficult to determine whether it's successful or not, right? So whenever you create a marketing funnel, it has to be specific, measurable. So for example, if you want your company to increase 25% increase in online leads in Q4 of 2021, that's your goal. So you have a specific goal, it's measurable. You know what was the number of leads in Q3, so you can, multiply that by 1.25. You know this is what we are trying to achieve, right? It has to be also attainable, because if say you want 2000% increase, then you will probably try certain strategies which are not sustainable and in fact will do more harm than good in the long run. So it has to be attainable and realistic, and it has to have a short time frame to it. So because you can determine the success and the failure at a reasonable time frame. So in this case it's a Q4, it's a quarter, so that's reasonable. So once you determine the goal, then you go to the marketing strategy of what are the things which you need to do to achieve this goal. In this example, I've given that, if it is like targeting the same audience who already know about your products, you'll probably try to offer them new offerings, new product offerings. How do you do that? You have to say you create a landing page. These are like not standalone single point. I mean, there are multiple ways in which you can do that. This is just an example, but you can create a landing page, for example, in which you can highlight these new offerings, how they're different, and finally you have a call to action. For example, in this case, like a sample order form, for example. So if somebody fills out the sample order form, that constitutes a lead. So you can quantify how many leads you can get. The final step here is that now you've created the landing page, you have the strategy, you have the goal. So how do you get more people to that landing page? Then there are multiple ways in which you can funnel traffic. Examples here is that you can, if this particular product warrants, then you can use social media, you can use specific types of display ads to a key demographics in key geo targets. Say for example, you are based in Maharashtra, so you want to try only Maharashtra and Gujarat. You can do that. You can choose specific geography, specific time in which you can run your ads and funnel them to that landing page, and some of them will thereby your goal of 25% increase in online leads can be met. So when it comes to the Indian digital marketing landscape, it's a very wide field and it's very easy to get lost in it and get overwhelmed. So one of the things which I always suggest whenever I start a project with any entrepreneur or any manufacturer is that we kind of grade the different avenues in which we can reach our potential customers. We cannot do everything at the same time. There are certain things which are the base. Like for example, the search engine marketing, what we call as the search engine optimization, which is the organic traffic. That is considered as the base in which you start, because that's the cheapest and the most effective way in which you can reach your customer. It takes longer, so you have to buttress that with certain other things. Initially, at least, you have to have specific types of ads which are very targeted. It's typically more niche because it's more costly. But in addition, there are two other broad ways in which you can reach your audience. One is social media, and again, it will depend on your product. If it is like a B2B product, then there is a way to do social media. Of course, B2C is more obvious, but the fourth component is like what we call as a referral marketing, which includes content marketing. So, especially for engineering products or for high-tech products, you have to depend a lot on the content marketing component. Like there are which includes forums, which includes blogs, and then you can create unique content. You can create content which can give a value to the potential audience, and then the target audience, and then you can sort of get your branding done more and more towards that. There are other ways as well. There are different types of publisher ads which you can do, etc. But these are the four sort of predominant ways in which you can reach your audience. So in terms of the overall strategy when you start the campaign, so there are two broad sort of pillars in which you base your strategy. The first is the branding, in which you can bring in web traffic from social media, from search engines, from content amplifications, etc. And the second part is that you have to have conversion. So it's quantitative as well as qualitative. The quantity is the numbers, like how many people, what's your total traffic, what's the traffic coming from organic, how much is the growth. That's the quantity, but it's not enough. Now, you have to have relevant quantity. So you have to have conversion centric traffic, which is more quality driven. So there are ways in which you can see here, obviously the conversions, like, if your conversion is calls or, filling out a form, those are obvious, but there are other more subjective qualitative factors, like say the bounce rate on the site. If the bounce rate of the site is high, that means that you're exposing your site to a lot of people, but they are probably not the people whom you are looking for, or the time on site, or the pages visited per site. These are all qualitative attributes which you need to also consider as part of your success, whether your project is successful or not. So in order to do that, you have to have this third prong, which is the measurement and optimization of your site. So it has to be continuously, the analytics has to continuously measure and compare with the best practices and the competition to see where you are and where you can improve, what are the best practices, how you can, improve on that. So typically there are four kind of ways in which you can have a holistic online strategy. Again, this is subjective, this is my opinion, but typically we start with the traffic. So it's a track mechanism. T stands for traffic, which is maximizing the different ways in which you can get traffic. The second is the retention. So you get the traffic, then how much of that you can really retain, how many people are engaged, who you're, the people who are coming to your site, are they really engaged? The third part is the audience. Like, you have to have, what are the different ways in which you're reaching the audience? Is it like a one particular profile you're reaching, or you're reaching multiple different profiles? So if you have different strategies, it's typically better, because then if you're just targeting one way, say for example, you're only targeting, say, Google. So you're missing out on certain people who are not using Google, right? Google is not a good example because most people use it, but say, if you're targeting social media, then you are only catering to people who are social media users. So that way there is less chance of people, there's a definitely higher chance of people of missing out people who are not there. Finally, you also have to look at conversion, because you have reached a wide audience, you have reached multiple different audiences, you have retained them, but the final objective is always conversion. Whatever is the definition of your conversion. If it's an e-commerce, it's a more obvious conversion. It's an order. But in many cases, it is not. If it's a business-to-business company, then it might be a lead gen. It's something which you're an interest group you're trying to create. Even like if you want to create a newsletter group, which you can later on do a drip campaign, or it can be pretty much anything which is quantifiable. So those, or maybe a white paper download. So those are all considered as a conversion in your definition. So whatever you define, that conversion analytics is an important criteria in your overall measures of success. So in today's, and this is a very evolving process, so it's very easy to get dated whenever there's any presentation on online marketing. But as of today, there are four sort of broad prongs in which you can kind of divide this entire digital mix quadrant. So you have the organic marketing, which is the predominant, or which is the base on which everything is based on. So you have to have, whatever you do, you have to have a strong organic base. Without that, the other parts like paid marketing usually doesn't work, because the paid marketing also depends a lot on how well your organic marketing does, and which we will see subsequently. But the organic part is primarily dependent on people who already know you as a company through other mechanisms. That's direct traffic. Search engine optimization, which gives, if somebody searches for certain keywords and they find you, those traffic is organic traffic that comes through SEO. People who go to social media, you know, Samishra mentioned about, influencer marketing. So there, if somebody kind of highlights certain products which they have used and they have a huge follower base, then you will suddenly see a surge of traffic. But these are all organic. You don't pay for that incremental increase in traffic. So, and then, inbound marketing, like you send out, say, e-blast, or, you are featured in some kind of editorial and people come reach you. So those are all organic. They're all part of organic, which includes direct, organic, and referral traffic. The other part is the paid marketing component. So within the paid marketing component, we have the pay-per-click, which is like the text ads, which, if somebody searches and you see the text ads, and I'll show you an example in the next slide. And then you have the display ads, which are banners, which are shown. Say, for example, you manufacture a product which is used for home improvement, and you provide these banner ads on, magazines which are online magazines, which are, home improvement magazines, for example. So those are digital display ads. To just take it a step further, there are rich text ads, there are video ads, there are ads on social media. Like, say, for example, when you start, typically one of the big, challenges which many of the manufacturers face, entrepreneurs face, is that, okay, you have only 100 followers. Even though you have a great social media team, what can they do? They are only reaching 100 people, right? Most of them are your friends, right? So how do you reach more? So you have to have targeted social media ads. For example, you can boost certain posts, or you can reach out to the similar demographics which you're trying to reach within social media and try to get more. And within email marketing or content amplification, there is a paid component as well. So for example, if you write a blog and you post it somewhere and you get organic traffic, but in addition to that, you can use certain tools. There are examples like, say, there's a tool called Taboola, for example, which amplifies the blog content and posts them in different forums. So if you see or different places on the web and somebody clicks on it, you pay for it. So for example, if you go to Google or Yahoo and you search for certain products, and then you see, there's a small print that there are certain results which says, it's the content is sponsored. So that's typically it's paid. So these are the two big prongs in which you can divide your total traffic and which you are trying to get. And then, of course, the third prong, which is not really traffic, it covers both organic and paid, is the mobile marketing. And this is extremely important in today's world because it gears, or it helps both organic and paid. If your site is not mobile responsive, if your site is not geared towards all the primary or the main sort of mobile devices, then the chances of your success in organic and paid are low, because you have to have, because mobile usage is growing, especially for internet penetration, especially in India. So there's a lot of people who are, who are using mobile devices to reach the internet. This is especially true intuitively for B2C products, but even for B2B products, especially, say, in today's world, post-pandemic, there's a lot of people who are working from home. There are ways, even product managers are working from home, etc. So they're not always using desktops. So your marketing strategy has to have a mobile component, mobile first component, if I may say so. So you have every ads you run, every website page you create, every landing page you design, it has to have mobile first mentality. You have to first test it on mobile, see how fast it is, whether it is, readable, and things like that. Fourth component, which again gears on all these three, you have to determine, is your mobile strategy working? How well is your paid marketing plan going? All these things you can only determine if you have a strong and robust reporting in place. So you have to have the reporting which will seamlessly kind of report to you or highlight you what are the things which are working and what is not, so you can improve on those. So to further, expand this, we talked about the broad prongs. Now I'm just dividing it into smaller groups. So organic SEO is one of the core areas from organic traffic. So which means that if somebody searches in any search engine for different products, different needs, etc., and they reach you, that is organic SEO. And typically around 40 to 45% of your total traffic should come from there. AdWords, retargeting, the things which Professor Mishra mentioned, that is also very important because initially you won't have organic SEO. It's always a chicken and egg situation in which you ideally want every traffic, everything to come from organically. But
Is this a disruption
There is some
on
disruption.
the site, or it is on the
There is an icon showing disconnected, perhaps. Error icon.
so product managers, etc. So it's very important for those kind of products to have a robust email drip campaign. And the sixth one is the microsites, which a lot of companies sort of ignore, especially say, for example, you have a company which has multiple products. You probably should have a flagship site and you can have microsites which are only featuring or only highlighting that specific product. So that way you are not wedded into the overall brand, right? You have an independent presence as well. Again, it is all case by case basis. There's no one solution fitting all. So it will depend on your current situation. So every plan which we do is always customized for that specific company or the specific startup, what they are or where they are on the chain, on their process, what they are looking for, and things like that. So in terms of once you start this process, the first step is always to focus on organic. It's a long-term process, but you have to start as soon as possible. You typically start with keyword research. What are the different questions which people can ask to find your product, which can gear towards your product, and then you can determine your content and there's multiple ways in which you can help improve the organic traffic, but you have to initiate that process. The paid traffic is typically complementary to the organic traffic. So instead of doing very broad keywords on paid traffic, which will probably break the bank of most startups, you have to use the focus on niche, lower cost keywords initially. And then as your organic traffic grows, you will probably taper down the paid traffic gradually. Content is another free source of traffic, so you will typically use a mix of research and knowledge articles. You can get a lot more different ways in which you can build the traffic. And we already talked about the mobile responsiveness and reporting and analytics. So as far as the organic traffic is concerned, we have Google, which is still the king of search. It has a dominant market share of 75% or more. In fact, for the startup industry or the manufacturing industry, it's even more. Most people use Google. Most of your potential customers will use Google, upward of 80%. So there are multiple ways in which you can get traffic from Google. The primary way is, of course, through organically. Like if somebody searches the key phrase and they will go to google.com and search, right? So that's the organic traffic. But in addition to that, you have images. People search images.google.com. There's a smaller component, but there is definitely some source from there as well. Videos is another big source. Blogs, again, using Google, search within blogs and finding you in different blogs. or in Google snippets and so on and so forth. Google is actually transitioning more to universal search. So this is going to become more important in the coming years. So in future, say, we don't know the time frame, but soon there will be, if somebody searches in google.com or google.co.in, it will typically give results. Right now there's giving paid ads and then organic listings, but in future they're going to combine everything in one page. It will have videos, it will have images, it will have logs, it will also have organic listings. So that's the universal search in which we are going towards. To some extent, Google has already transitioned to that, but it can be even more. And of course, mobile traffic is growing. Again, it is growing in different rates for different industries. If it is B2C, it is more pronounced. If it's B2B, it is growing. And at some point, we expect by 2024, for all kinds of sites, it is going to outpace desktop traffic. That's our opinion. But in some industries, it has already outpaced. In addition to the actual content of the website, that's typically not enough for you to rank on the first page of Google. There are other things which you need to do. And one of them are links. Like links are like, word of mouth on brick and mortar. So if somebody goes to, has used a product and they tell their peers that it's a great product, that's word of mouth in real life, right? But an online cycle, Google is an automated tool, end of the day. There's no person sitting in Google and determining whether you bring you on the first page. So if it's an automated tool, it has to find a similar way in which they can find out something which is simulating word of mouth. So link is like that. So if there is a reference from, say, a high authority site, which references your product or references your website, then chances are that your website is relevant or is an authority in your domain. So Google will reward you, right? Improving your ranking in that. So it has definite importance, but it has evolved because a lot of people have misused it in the past. And this is something which Google's algorithm is continuously changing, and it is trying to be one step ahead of people who are trying to manipulate. So Google's algorithm, it has evolved a lot in the last 20 years I've been involved. So initially it was very simple. It was so easy to come to the first top couple of pages. All you have to do is to have pages which have strong keyword density. You repeat the keywords multiple times. This was the early days. But soon, they have different updates. They usually name them after, and animals. So in this case, it was hummingbird update, which came, which moved them, which penalize people who are using spammy content. So you move towards more semantic content, which means that, you cannot keep on using the same keyword which you're trying to rank for again and again, and things like that. Then we had another update called the Pigeon update, which focused on local searches. So for example, if you are based in West Bengal and you are catering to an audience which is, you have sales offices in the eastern region like Orissa, Bihar, and West Bengal, and then you really you don't have the capacity to, say, ship to a different part of India or to a different part of the world. So then, if somebody searches in a different part of the country or the world, and if you come up, it's a waste, right? It will reduce not just your efficiency, but also ultimately people will stop using Google because it's not a relevant search result. So to prevent that from happening, they created this Pigeon update, which determines the search results based on where you are. So it's like localized. In terms of, and then we have links and page rank, which I briefly alluded to before, which is like if there are links or references back to your site from different places, like there is a directory or there is a magazine editorial, or there's multiple different ways in which you can get linked back to your website. And Google uses these to figure out how many people are talking about you online, right? More people talk about you, and especially if those people Google consider as high authority, then you have a higher page rank. Now, page rank used to be a factor, but is no longer there. But the concept still remains. It's like, it's still, there is like, if you have references from higher authority sites, then definitely you are going to be rewarded. So that's how Google algorithms evolved, because they felt that just by creating a good site and good content, that's usually not enough. There's multiple sites like that. There's only 10 people whom I can bring on the first page. How do I differentiate? So in addition to the content on page, you have to have good links, good references from other sites. But the flip side of that is that people started misusing. I know there are people who created link farms. They created big content sites and started giving thousands of links out. So those are, then there are certain updates which came, analyze people who are not doing it the right way. We call it black hat mechanism. So there are two schools of thought when it comes to Google optimization, the white hat and the black hat. The black hat typically tries to find loopholes and get more faster sort of results. White hat takes longer, but it's more sustainable. So these updates are typically used to come down on those black hat mechanisms. We are continuously having update. Every year they come up with updates. Real-time searches and mobile first update has been some of the recent ones. So if you look at a website, they have an overall score. So if you go to any kind of tool and you parse your website, you will get a score which determines all these attributes, which I just mentioned, like some are on page, some are off page. And together you get a score, and if your relative score is higher, then the chances of you ranking for the keywords which you're competing for is more. So there are multiple ways. I mentioned 200. So there are certain which are more important than the others. So there are ways like, for example, there are like on-page content, whether you have like basic things like the site is structured, whether it has tags, when Google crawls the site, can it understand what your site is about? So that's a very important factor, because without that, not rank you because they don't even know what your site is about, right? But that's not enough. Again, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So in addition to that, you have to have off-page factors like signals which are coming to your site, links which are coming to your site, whether your site, the different things which you have, it's consistent or not, whether you have taken the time to make your site responsive, whether the site has good usability, whether it is funneling is good, whether if somebody clicks on your site, are they having a good experience? How do they know that? Through the analytics. Whatever analytics you have, they also have the data. So they can figure out, okay, if somebody sees your organic listing, how many people click through it? That's a click-through ratio, right? So if you have a stronger click-through ratio, that's an advantage. It's not a big advantage, but it adds up. But in addition to that, there may be people who are coming to the site, how long they're staying. If they're staying longer, they're more engaged, then chances are your site is more relevant and Google will reward it. So all these are different factors which goes into your organic rankings. It's broadly broken up into two parts: the on-page changes, which is changes on your site, and off-page changes, which are external to your site. So if there is a blog externally, if there is directories externally which has link back to your site, that's called off-page. Anything which is on your site is called on-page. So typically we have around 40-60 breakup. 40% of the focus is on on-page and 60% off-page. Again, this is like just based on empirical studies. Nobody knows for sure, but this is just based on different studies which people have conducted in the past. Typically, for any successful organic campaigns, you start with a strong competition analysis. So you know who is your best practice competitors. So in your industry, if you have a good competitor, it's an advantage because you know what you are trying to become, what you're trying to exceed. So what are the different things which they're doing? What are the places where they're getting backlinks from? What kind of content they have? So typically we have a strong competition analysis and benchmarking, and that helps in improving the site. Apart from the organic paid part, there are multiple different ways which you can pay to get traffic. Again, this is costly, more costly, but it is important in certain areas or in certain products. So Google text and banner ads is example. There's a Google AdWords platform which is the largest or the most common way of giving ads. In addition to that, Bing ads cater to Bing.com and Yahoo.com. Typically around 10 to 15% of the market you can cater towards that. It's cheaper than Google, but obviously you'll reach a smaller component of people. Then you have a third component, which is called the publisher network, which means that there are certain groups of sites. Say, for example, you are trying to reach people who are in aerospace industry. Now you can go to a specific aerospace forums, etc., and do one-to-one interaction with them, but typically you will not. I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort, and those sites of those companies may not be geared towards dealing with people one-to-one. So to save that from happening, there are some publisher networks which forms groups of sites. So there is publisher networks, affiliate networks, which Professor Mishra mentioned, things where, you have these different groups of sites there and you can just, be a publisher there. So there are two entities there. One is the publisher, one is the advertiser. So the publishers are all these different, say in this example, all the high tech or the aerospace or anything related to that sites, forums, etc. They are the publishers. That's where the ads will come. And then there are the advertisers, which is somebody like you who is trying to advertise. So instead of reaching to each of these sites one-to-one, you can go to this publisher network and at one shot you can get access to this whole group. Retargeting ads is somebody who has already visited your site. You have cookies on your this platform, and so they can figure out, okay, people who have visited your site. Now all of you must have experienced that. You have seen a particular product and now suddenly you go somewhere else and it follows you. So it's not magic, it's just retargeting. So that's something which is very important for reinforcement. And then you have the image and the video ads, which are also very important. So within the Google AdWords, there are multiple different types of ads within that itself. And most of the things which I mentioned is important here because this is something which you can always, sort of base your ads first on Google. And then if you have more budget, then you can go to the others. So in this example, you can see the shopping ads on the top, you have some text ads, and then you have the regular organic listing there. So one important thing to note here is that the Google ad ranking is not just based on dollar or rupee amount. Like you cannot just pay yourself out here. Bid rate is just one component. But in addition to that, there are two other components which determines whether your ads appear or where it appears, how high it appears, so quality score and the click-through ratio. So for example, in this example, if somebody is bidding high, so they will initially come on the top, but if nobody is clicking through it, the click-through ratio is lower. Eventually, they will go below somebody who is bidding lower than you, but they have a higher click-through ratio or they have a high quality score, which means their landing page or their the experience is better, so are more relevant for this particular keyword, so they will get rewarded more. So this is typically a Google AdWords example. So whenever a manufacturing company or an entrepreneur starts a process, they will get this dashboard and they can figure out which keywords are working, which what is the click-through ratio, what is the marginal cost per click, and so on and so forth. They can determine in real time which parts to improve and which parts not to improve. As opposed to organic, the AdWords are immediate, so you can get results pretty much very quickly. In addition to the paid and the organic traffic, the video marketing is another important factor, especially today, because as you probably know, YouTube is the second largest search engine platform after Google. So it's a very, very important platform. A lot of people, a lot of different, again, it will depend on the products which you are trying to care. If it is relevant for YouTube videos, then that's some area in which you have to consider when you determine your online mix. Email drip campaigns is another one which we have discussed before. There is a whole strategy towards this, like you create different interest groups based on their experience based on whether they're opening the opening the emails, and how much they're engaging, and so on and so forth. So it's a long cycle which people use, but it's free. So typically, this is a viable campaign, even though it takes longer to achieve results. Content marketing is the final component, which is one of the primary components especially for product companies. So you have different articles posted, different content calendar you create. You can create infographics and post them in social media, and so on and so forth. So that is another way in which you can get traffic. Social media we have already covered. This is again based on product by product, it will differ. Say for example, if it's a more professional sort of service or product, then LinkedIn is an important strategy. B2C, it's more Facebook, Instagram oriented, and so on and so forth. So in terms of, to summarize, we have whenever you come to any successful digital strategy, you have to have certain parameters which you determine. In this example, they are determining through the overall reach, the organic traffic, the average time on site, the inquiries from the website, and then the call tracking, where they track how many calls come from the website, and so on and so forth. And they have specific targets. Again, you come back to that original slide which I mentioned about the SMART objective. So it has to cater towards that to make it more successful. And these are some of the reporting dashboards which a successful digital strategy usually uses. So this is like a digital Google Analytics. This is again the basic form of analytics. It's free. It's used by almost majority of the websites. So this is where you start. And then as your company grows, you can always go to a higher or more sophisticated analytics. To summarize, that in today's world, majority of your customers are online. So a digital marketing mix is not a luxury. It's a must, in my opinion, especially for small and medium-sized manufacturing companies, because your budget is limited. And there is no strategy which goes farthest for your buck and digital strategy. Any other marketing is more costly, more costly. So it's cost effective. It has a multiple different marketing mix which you can seamlessly sort of adopt and change. You can, you have, the future is on mobile, and digital marketing is based in mobile. And finally, this is the way in which you can empower your target customer, which in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, is the best way to sell. So I will end this presentation with this quote of Zig Ziglar that, you have to have the mindset of, even though this is a sales presentation, it's really, we are not trying to push sell, to stop selling, and we have to start helping. If we have that mindset of helping our potential consumer, then chances are that we will be successful. So again, the other quote which I wanted to allude to is the business has two functions: marketing and innovation. You being the entrepreneur and the setup and the startup, you already did the innovation part. Now you have to cater to the other part, which is marketing. Thank you. So I will open it for questions. If anybody has any questions, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Danny. Danny, I would say, for that. I think you got your video was closed in between, perhaps due to the bandwidth issue that was there. You can turn on your video. Okay.
So anybody who would like to ask a question, you can either directly ask or type it in the chat box. Either way. If there are questions, you can either type it in the chat box or you can directly ask. I don't know whether you will be able to unmute yourself, because that issue is there. So you can type it on the chat box in case you are not audible.
So while people are preparing for their questions or anything, let me try to summarize whatever he Dipankar had covered in his talk. It is indeed a very nice talk that he has given, telling the relevance of or the need of doing this marketing for your industry, and particularly if it is a medium and small industry in a very fast-growing world, the presence being felt for whatever little you are contributing in the economy or in the value chain, it gets a big boost if you make you market yourself correctly. Traditional marketing has been, as he mentioned, has been a little more tedious and a more difficult way to do things, and perhaps landing up more expensive as well. But today's digital world has made it very easier, and he has shown the relevance or the influence of it in the design, the purchase cycle experience, and used a very nice terminology which was pretty useful for me as well to relate to, like the smart terminology and how it helped in making the marketing funnel be very effective. And then the TRAC and the digital quadrant, online digital quadrant, the putting in a digital plan for manufacturing was a nice component that he introduced in the talk today, and how to distinguish between organic and paid traffic. And it's good that we could see a live example or an example of how a typical dashboard happens through Google, which is one of the best platforms to allow marketing both on the paid view side or the search engine side, as well as on its video counterpart, which it is offering through YouTube. So that was a very nice presentation. So if you have any questions, of course, please start entering. Before we take those questions, yes, let me hear from
there are quite a number of questions.
Very good. Now we can.
Yes, I thank you, Dr. Mishra. Thank you, Dr. Mondal. So I can see the questions, so I can quickly try to answer some of them. So the first question I will read out is like, how would we project on how much growth in traffic should be set as a goal? How do we determine what is a healthy growth of traffic? That's the first question. So I'll try to answer that. So that again, you have to remember that it is all based on case-to-case basis. So what, in your example, if you are where you are as a company, it will determine what is your target growth. So if you are starting out, you have a very small base. So at that time, the goal that is the first stage, which is like to reach out to as many people as possible. So if you say have a small base, anything less than say 1,000 visitors in a month, so then you have to set a bigger target percentage wise, right? So you have to have, typically we set, and it's not immediate, we typically set a 6 monthly target of 100% around that growth for low traffic sites. But if the site is a little bit more mature, if they already have 1,000 plus visitors, then the growth target, again, it will depend on industry to industry, but typically we target 25 to 40% growth target for 6 months duration. That's again, it's a very canned answer, so it will depend on product to product. If it's like more B2B product, then we are not just looking for big traffic increases, but as it's a B2C product, we do want a more efficient traffic. That was the OEMs in India are largely of digital marketing. What other options are available for B2B type medium enterprises? Because large happens via networking, So this, I think, is a very important topic, point which you have raised. So this is very important because this is the only way in which you as a smaller, medium-sized entrepreneur can go head to head with a bigger company. It's very important to note that Google is one of the most sort of, easiest or the best way in which, there is the least amount of sort of obstacle. Like in many cases, if you're a large company, you have inbuilt big advantages. You have a big sales team. You have a lot more marketing budget. You have a lot more advantages, right? But digital marketing is the only way in which you can, if not close, at least you can close the gap. So you have many ways in which you can do more cost effectively for B2B businesses. For example, LinkedIn, I touched upon it briefly. Of course, it's a time presentation, so I cannot go too in depth in it, but LinkedIn is one example in which we can use B2B type marketing a lot. We can use certain other blogging techniques in which are, certain forums. Again, it's based on which type of B2B products you have. And there are specialized forums where, your target product managers or people who are the decision makers are prevalent, and you can reach them. So those are the ways in which you can network, but it's online networking, so it's cheaper. Another question is, what could be the strategy for an academic institute to market where there's also immense competition? And this is very, very, again, important topic for me because I have personally helped academic institutions here in the US because it's, again, here, it's very, very competitive. It's competitive for the students to get to an institution, but at the same time, there are multiple good institutions who are trying or vying for good students as well, right? So, there are multiple strategies which you can adopt, but here it's more reputation based, online reputation based. That's my opinion. So you have to have, when you have an online footprint as an academic institution, you have to make sure proactively that you have to have a positive reputation, online reputation, which you can show to the world. That should be a primary focus. And then, the search results, etc., will come in addition. But typically, people will not do that way. People typically do not find about an academic institute first time through Google search engine. They reinforce their opinion after they know about the institute through online. So once they search about that academic institute, if positive results come, then that's a big advantage. So the last question here is about the circular economy, consumer awareness. Now, yes, this is a very important question, and this is something which, I mean, there's a long answer to that, so probably I will have to take this offline. But thank you so much for all your questions. I think it has been a pleasure for me to get this opportunity to speak with all of you, and I would love to be involved in the entrepreneur segment, which Dr. Mondal mentioned. And I am very heartened by the fact that in today, like especially from 2010, I believe he mentioned that you have started this initiative, because this is a really important thing, in my opinion, because this is not just for the students of IIT Kharagpur, but also there's a lot of employment generation opportunity. I wish it was there in the early 90s when I graduated, but at least it is there now. So that's something which is a very, very good event which has started, and I would definitely try to help that.
Professor Mandal, would you like to summarize? Dipankar, your video is not coming in.
Oh,
It would be
okay.
nice if you
I'm
turn
sorry.
it on. I think it perhaps got turned off during due to some bandwidth issues in between. There you are. Nice to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedule, and very eloquently explaining the digital marketing concept. Even persons without any initiation, perhaps they have understood a lot and taken away a lot of understanding about digital marketing. So you have covered virtually most of the things in digital marketing, starting from underscoring the need for digital marketing, meaning that you mentioned particularly that you may have a wonderful product, but that doesn't sell. If that doesn't sell, then there is no business. So obviously it has to be sold, and selling is the part of marketing. So marketing is as important as manufacturing. So you must have a wonderful product, otherwise whatever marketing you do, perhaps you won't make anything. But then both of them should be there, and the concluding remarks also says that innovation and marketing both should be there. So you have the best product and the best marketing effort, you have a successful business. So you have underscored the need for content marketing, how the customer persona has to be defined, and then come up with a narrative that resonates with the persona of the customers, and then you have a wonderful engagement with the customer, and then you can sell. So, and you have distinguished very clearly about traditional marketing and digital marketing, and why digital marketing more important than traditional. Particularly, traditional is costly, and the impact happens much after you advertise. You never know who the customers are and who is watching the advertisement. Whereas digital marketing is directed towards the customer, towards your potential customers, and they get to know. And you have a shortcut with the customer rather than waiting for people to watch some program or some printed media and then come. But particularly now, today's world, things are changing so fast that you want to know the customer. There are so much of analytics that you have underscored, that you use the analytics to understand changing customer needs, and they are changing very fast. So you want to know tomorrow's liking in today, and then you want to come prepared so that you are just rightly ready with your product that the customers are going to demand tomorrow. Another issue is budgeting, because the money is limited, and you cannot afford to do traditional marketing. Digital marketing is so cheap, so economic that you would like to do digital marketing rather than doing that. Then of course, pretty much there are so much, I couldn't note down so much. So and you have answered the questions also so wonderfully well. There was one question I just wanted to supplement, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
See, somebody said how much of the traffic that is good enough. So bringing traffic requires money. So you can keep on increasing the traffic, and then there is no end to it. But then you have to understand how much of the traffic is getting converted into customers. So instead of spending so much money bringing customers, it is better to economize as to how many people are actually getting translated into buyer, rather than increasing footfall. Footfall is a vanity matrix, meaning you can keep on telling people, so many people have come to my site, but that doesn't translate into revenue, translate into profit. So you have to see how much of them are getting translated to customer. Not only that, how much of them you are capable of retaining, meaning they are coming second time, third time, and in the process they are buying. So there is always an optimization between the two. So having said that, thank you again, Danny, for spending quality time with us, and I look forward to you to deliver some lectures to our students. They will feel enamored about listening to some of their seniors.
Yeah.
Particularly
I would do the same. I would love to do it. I send my email on the chat to you.
Right, I got it. Thank you for sending the email. I noted that. DannyBasu@gmail.com.
Yes.
So
thank you again, Dr. Mondal, Professor Kumar, and Ananta, and all the staff for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks once again for sparing the time you did on this Saturday, early morning, your time. And before we close the session today, it is also our duty to inform others that this is a series that is going through for the next few weeks as well throughout the September. We are happy we had Dipankar in the first week. The next 3 weeks we have PP Gautam from TCS Research. He's talking on a very interesting topic on integrated design and development of materials, products, and manufacturing processes. Obviously, for accelerated product development, which is what everybody looks forward to. And of course, we have another of our well-known alumnus, Smith Banerjee, who is not very, you can say recently, quite recently taken over as the Chief Technology Officer of ANSYS. He has had many roles, and this is a big, nice move. We will be happy to hearing from him on digital twin. And then on September 25th, we have Professor Kesav Das from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he will talk about decision and control systems as well. So we look forward to all of you participating in the next set of classes, the talks. And if any one of you want to have a look at the video recording and all that, here is the QR code. You can scan it and simply get the access to that. So once again, thank you all for spending time on this weekend, and have a nice weekend. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Danny, and it is nice to have you here.
Thank you, Danny.
See that IIT tempo is maintained from this channel as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are
Bye.
closing the session.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll be